Welcome to Inside WWII, your essential source for in-depth World War II history. We go beyond the timelines to explore the untold stories, key strategies, and personal accounts that shaped the greatest global conflict. If you're looking for high-quality, historically accurate content that truly brings the past to life, subscribe now and join us for the full story. 40% versus 1.5%. The death rate for American POWs in Japanese camps was staggeringly high compared to those held by the Germans. This extreme brutality and the revenge it fueled defined the darkest chapter of the Pacific War, setting the stage for an unexpected cultural transformation when the American occupiers finally arrived in Japan. American attitudes towards Japanese soldiers. Lower number of Japanese POWs. Americans took far fewer Japanese soldiers as prisoners of war in the Pacific than on the European front. Surrender was considered highly dishonorable in Japanese military culture, so many soldiers chose death over captivity. Anger and revenge. The extreme atrocities that Japanese soldiers had shown to American POWs in the Philippines, such as the Bataan Death March and other Allied soldiers, led to a deep sense of anger and revenge among American soldiers towards Japanese prisoners of war. Incidents of inhumane treatment. In some cases, American soldiers also treated Japanese prisoners of war inhumanely or killed them before taking them as prisoners of war. However, the death rate of Japanese prisoners at the hands of Americans was relatively low compared to the brutality of Japanese forces towards American soldiers. Japanese treatment of American POWs. The experiences of American POWs held by Japan were horrific and tragic. Inhumane treatment. The Imperial Japanese Army did not abide by the 1929 Geneva Conventions. They hated and showed no respect for those who surrendered. Mortality rate. The mortality rate of Allied, including American soldiers, in Japanese POW camps was over 40%, much higher than in German or Italian camps. Labor use. POWs were forced to perform forced labor, with starvation, inadequate medical care, and extreme physical abuse, such as in the construction of the infamous Death Railway. Hell ships. Prisoners were kept in overcrowded and extremely unsanitary conditions while being transported to the Japanese islands or elsewhere on ships known as Hell ships, where thousands of prisoners died. End of the war and subsequent relations. Release and supply. After the Japanese surrender in 1945, American soldiers liberated surviving American POWs from various camps in Japan through Operation Swift Mercy and provided them with food and medical care. Occupation. At the end of the war, American military forces under General Douglas MacArthur occupied Japan. During this time, American influence in Japan was widespread, and a variety of relationships developed between soldiers and Japanese civilians, which were completely different from the relationship between prisoners of war. In short, the relationship between American soldiers and Japanese prisoners of war during World War II was a dark chapter of violence, revenge, and culture clash, with both sides harboring deep animosity toward each other. Japanese brutality against American POWs. In Japanese military culture, surrender was viewed as the ultimate dishonor. Japan did not formally ratify the 1929 Geneva Conventions, which guaranteed the human rights of prisoners. As a result, the atrocities committed against American POWs were widespread and systematic. A. Prisoner life and inhumanity. Bataan Death March. In 1942, approximately 70,000 American and Filipino soldiers in the Philippines surrendered to the Japanese and were forced to make a long and grueling march. The prisoners were forced to walk without food or water. Those who fell or were too exhausted to walk were bayoneted or shot.
Extreme rationing. Prisoners were given far fewer calories than they needed, leading to malnutrition, beriberi, and other deadly diseases. The Japanese did not give prisoners enough to keep them alive, but only enough to make them work. Torture and slave labor. POWs were routinely beaten, humiliated, and tortured by guards. They were forced to work for the war effort, such as doing hard physical labor on the construction of the Thailand-Burma Railway, the Death Railway. Unit 731. Although not a direct POW camp, this secret unit of the Japanese military conducted horrific and inhumane biological and chemical experiments on live prisoners, which may have included some Americans. Mortality rate. The mortality rate of American POWs held by the Japanese was over 40%, much higher than in German or Italian camps. B. Hell ships. When prisoners were transferred from Japanese-occupied territory to Japan or other camps, they were crammed into dark, dirty, and airless compartments of ships. These ships were known as hell ships. The prisoners were not given drinking water, food, or sanitation. Often, these ships were attacked by Allied submarines or aircraft, as there was no sign of POWs on board. As a result, many POWs were also killed by friendly fire. American treatment of Japanese POWs. The atrocities of the Japanese had a deep sense of hostility and revenge among American soldiers, which was reflected in their behavior. Few surrenders. The Americans received very few Japanese soldiers as POWs due to the die-but-don't-surrender attitude of the Japanese soldiers. Some atrocities. Although American military leaders were ordered to abide by the Geneva Conventions in the heat of the war and to retaliate for Japanese atrocities, some American soldiers killed or treated Japanese soldiers who surrendered as prisoners of war. Intelligence gathering. Japanese prisoners who surrendered often felt isolated because they were considered disrespectful in their own culture and helped the Americans with important military information. Generally humane treatment. Japanese POWs captured by the Americans and other Allied powers were treated fairly well under the Geneva Conventions, just like German or Italian prisoners of war, which was the exact opposite of the treatment given to the Japanese. Post-World War II relations. Occupation. After the surrender of Japan in August 1945, the relationship changed from prisoner of war to occupation. Political and economic relations. The American Occupation Administration under General Douglas MacArthur played a significant role in democratic reforms in Japan, the formulation of a new pacifist constitution, and the reconstruction of the economy. Social relations. American troops were stationed in Japan for 7 long years. Initially, the Japanese had mixed feelings towards the occupying American troops, a mixture of fear, hatred, and respect. Over time, the soldiers established various social and personal relationships with the Japanese people, especially women. During this time, significant changes occurred in Japanese culture where American influence was evident. These detailed facts will help you understand the complexity of the relationship between American soldiers and Japanese prisoners of war. Initial attitude: freedom from fear. Japanese preparation before the surrender, the Japanese government had been preaching that the Americans were barbarians and would commit atrocities on Japanese women and children if they landed. Many were even prepared to commit suicide. Reality shock. When the American troops landed, they behaved in a disciplined manner under the strict orders of General MacArthur. Instead of committing any massacres against the Japanese, the soldiers brought them chocolate bars, food, and medical treatment.
Public reaction. The Japanese people quickly realized that their government had lied to them. With the end of the war and the famine looming, the American occupation came as an unexpected relief to many Japanese. In the midst of hunger and hardship, the food, such as food aid through the Gario Fund, and relief provided by the Americans were life-saving. Social impact of American soldiers. The American occupation brought about radical changes in Japanese society and culture. Food and products. American soldiers brought their own products such as chewing gum, cigarettes, chocolate, which became popular on the Japanese black market or through barter. Entertainment and culture. American music, movies, sports, especially baseball, and fashion quickly spread among Japanese youth. Behavioral changes. Americans taught the Japanese that there was no need to fear or belittle military guards. Soldiers often mingled with the people in a friendly manner. Relationships between American soldiers and Japanese women. This relationship was the most sensitive and varied. Sexual relations and prostitution. The Japanese government officially established the Recreation and Amusement Association, RAA, to meet the sexual needs of American soldiers. The intention was to protect ordinary women, although in the process, many women were forced into prostitution by force or economic pressure. Although the American administration later closed the RAA, prostitution continued. Love and marriage. Many American soldiers and Japanese women developed genuine romantic relationships. At the end of the war, thousands of Japanese women married American soldiers and immigrated to America as war brides. Mixed-race children. These relationships resulted in many mixed-race children born in Japan, whose social acceptance was initially problematic in society. Rape and crime. Despite MacArthur's strict laws, rape by some American soldiers still occurred, which angered the Japanese. Political and legal reforms. The American occupation also brought about major changes in the political structure of Japan. Democratization. The Americans established democracy in Japan, drafting a new constitution. This constitution kept the emperor as a symbolic head only and included basic human rights, such as the right to freedom of speech. Women's rights. A significant aspect of the new constitution was the granting of women the right to vote and property rights, which were unthinkable in pre-war Japanese society. Abolition of military power. According to Article 9, the Constitution was required to renounce the right to declare war and abolish its military, except for the self-defense forces. This relationship led to rapid modernization and Western cultural penetration in Japan, which forever changed the country's history. The Tokyo Trial. The trial of Japan's top military and political leaders was held in Tokyo from April 29, 1946 to November 1948. The tribunal was modeled after the Nuremberg trials in Germany. Main points of the trial. The Japanese leaders accused in the Tokyo trials were charged with 3 main counts. Category A crimes, crimes against peace, conspiracy to plan and wage a war of aggression. This charge was brought against the highest leaders of Japan. Category B crimes, conventional war crimes, such as inhuman treatment, torture and murder of POWs, civilian prisoners, and inhabitants of occupied territories. Category C crimes, crimes against humanity, such as genocide, extermination, slavery, and other inhumane acts. Outcome of the trial. The tribunal indicted 28 high-ranking military and political leaders. Death sentences. 7 were sentenced to death by hanging, chief among them wartime Prime Minister Hideki Tojo. Life sentences. 16 were sentenced to life imprisonment. Other sentences. The rest received shorter sentences. 2 defendants died during the trial. Other trials. In addition to the Tokyo trials, smaller military courts were set up in various Allied territories to try second-tier and local military officials. Approximately 5,000 Japanese war criminals were tried in various Asian countries, e.g. China, the Philippines, the Netherlands, Australia, of whom 900 were sentenced to death. These trials mainly punished military officers responsible for atrocities such as the torture and murder of prisoners such as the Bataan Death March or Unit 731. Controversial issues. The Tokyo trials were controversial. Emperor Hirohito's release. MacArthur and the American administration kept Emperor Hirohito out of the trial. The reason for this was to keep the emperor as a unifying symbol in Japan and to ensure the country's rapid stabilization. However, this raised questions about the emperor's wartime role. Justice Radhabinod Pal of India was the only one of the judges at the tribunal to acquit all the accused. According to him, the tribunal was a victor's justice, and the legal basis for the charges, known as war crimes, was weak. He is remembered with reverence in Japan. The Tokyo trials were a significant step in the history of international law, laying the foundation for the future creation of the International Criminal Court.